And a 1 and a 2 and a 1, 2, ma. That's not even close. And a 3 and a 4 and a 5, 6, 7, 8. D D D D D D D. Shh, beep bop bop beep bop blah. Whoa. That's less close, or it's less far. Not quite as close as it should be for picks of yeah. I'm a tired boy, and I still have some chores to do today. So shut up. First up, Black Hammer Reborn number 12. Unless I'm very, 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 very much mistaken, this is the final issue of Black Hammer for good, I guess. I don't know if he's going to come back to it, but I mostly picked this for this week so I could read it first in my head. Otherwise, I would have to read it second or third because it will be near the top of the second. I'm super excited for this. I'm not excited for it to be ending, if it is in fact ending. And there have been a bunch of spin-off books and stuff and miniseries and stuff that Lemire didn't even write, you know. He's had other people come in and play with his toys, so hopefully those will still pop up, or it'll be like Astro City where it goes away for a while and then comes back. Either way. Also this week, I got Fuck This Place number 1. Yes, I mostly bought it for this. There is a more family-friendly version called I Hate This Place, but I prefer to think of it at this title. It is logged in my list as Fuck This Place, not I Hate This Place. And I'm pretty sure I Hate This Place was how it was, advertised and stuff. I don't recognize this artist's name, nor am I going to attempt to pronounce it, but Kyle Starks is the writer on this, and I want to say I just read something by him recently, but I can't remember what it is. He definitely did, I want to say about 7 or 8, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, a book called The Rock Candy Mountain, or is it The Big Rock Candy Mountain? I think it's just Rock Candy Mountain. And it was pretty good. It was a hobo story, which you don't see a lot of those. In fact, I have a book called Hard Travelin' that I bought years ago before I went on some long trip. Like I was going to read it on a plane, and I still have yet to read it. It was the first book I bought for my Kindle, so that would have been, or for my tablet, so that would have been like 2016, I want to say. I don't know. But it was good. Rock Candy Mountain. I remember talking about it with my friend John, who used to work at the comic shop with me in San Diego, and we agreed that there were times where the dialogue got a little too modern for our tastes, and that's honestly something, I don't know if that's a new thing or if I'm just noticing it because I'm that old, and I know I'm not old, but I just have the years behind me to sort of notice this, but nothing, or a few things really, will yank me out of a period piece than dialogue that is anachronistic. If it's even a question, you should just not do it. I think I feel like it almost feels like when the show Deadwood came out and people were like, oh, you can swear in Westerns? Like, did you think that the Old West was settled by guys who didn't use a few blue words every now and again? But I do understand that for years, when in the 50s and 60s, when Westerns were at their height, you couldn't really have them cursing a lot and stuff. Certainly not to the level of Deadwood. But I feel like ever since then, people are like, oh, you can, and I could just complete speculation on my part, but people are like, oh, you can have people talk normal in their minds, like modern. That's not how it works. I don't think Kyle Starks did that to that extent, but it was definitely something that I remember to this day. Like, it was great, and the art was really good too. I don't remember who drew that, but yeah. This next pick is my pick of the week for the comical book store as well. Shaolin Cowboy, Cruel to Be Kin, number 1. I'm very, very excited. This is written and drawn by Jeff Darrow, as it has been for years now. The last Shaolin Cowboy series came out in 2017. Who Will Stop the Rain? Is that what it was called? I'm afraid to monkey with this because... Oh, I should have brought my phone in here with me. No. Shaolin Cowboy is Jeff Darrow is probably the most well-known character. Jeff Darrow is an incredible artist, and I'm not going to... You can see on the cover art how... Well, maybe you can kind of see how detailed he gets. And I'll open it up and show you this next week. Oh, I'm sure you're all on pins and needles now. But he's an incredible artist, but he also takes forever to finish anything. And I think, like, not the last series, but the one before, in between issues, there was a huge long wait, and it was really frustrating. But I think at this point, he finishes the whole series before they start publishing it, which is really just a very nice thing for him to do. He also drew a book written by Frank Miller in the 80s. I think this is how I got to know him, called Hardboiled, which I would love to revisit as well. It holds up. I read it not that long ago. Reread it not that long ago. But yeah, and it's always super violent. The Shaolin Cowboy is just a silly idea to begin with. He never talks. He's super badass. There's almost no dialogue. I mean, you can rip through these if you're just reading them casually, but you want to look at a giant lizard holding a machine gun with his tail and firing it. You want to take your time with an artist of Jeff Darrow's caliber, is all I'm trying to say. I certainly do. I can't speak for everybody, nor would I care to. I don't think I could dumb myself down enough. Okay. Picks of last week, I read Blood Syndicate #1. I did enjoy this, but I don't remember it now. And I really still, I was reading it, and I was like, oh yeah. Okay, yeah, now I remember it. So this is very different from what little I can recall of the original Blood Syndicate, where we find our protagonist back in Dakota City after being at war in the Middle East, in a made-up comic book country. I think you can assume it's Afghanistan, not Sadaka, which I actually did look up to make sure it wasn't a real place, because I am sensitive. But yeah, characters like Holocaust and Tech 9, and I think it's rebooted, which, I mean, they're all like that nowadays, these new Milestone books. They didn't change much. Like, Hardware's origin is still pretty much the same. Also, I want to say Hardware kind of just does pick up. It doesn't pick up where the series left off, but it begins as though you've already read the first issue of the original series. That's how I remember it. But yeah, this is great. There was another, actually, and maybe I'll show it to you next week, but there was a new Milestone book out this week called Duo. And it's different in that it's not a reboot of a previous Milestone series that I'm aware of. And it also... all the Milestone books take place in fictional Dakota City, and Duo does not. And it says it right on the cover, like that's how they're kind of pushing it. Like, oh, we're expanding the Milestone universe, which I'm all for. You could still set it in Dakota, I wouldn't care, but either way. I also read Hulk vs. Thor, Banner of War, Part 1, Alpha. And yeah, it was basically what you would expect, but also it's basically what I expected, which was a lot of punching, but then also some illusions as to this isn't just going to be a slugfest. Boy, I really hope this comes back. Hulk and Banner fight on a planet called Saccharine, which is very cartoony, as you can see. And the narration describes it as a wretched planet filled with disease-plagued warmongering cannibals that devour the eyes of their young to appease their all-knowing pain god. I would like to have seen more of that, frankly. So hopefully that will come back. But I mean, dude, come on. Why aren't you reading this? Comic books are your best entertainment value for your dollar. And that will always be the case, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, alright, that was a good part. Tune in to Old Man Flips Through a Comic Book he read last week. Ah, yes, that's right. I don't want to give away the ending, but... yeah, since Donny Cates is writing both Hulk and Thor, it really is... I mean, I wouldn't say you have to be reading those books in order to follow this, but that's the other thing, is that you ought to be, because I thought this was going to be its own miniseries, but it's not. It's more of its own mini event. And what they're doing these days, not always, but what they're doing with this one certainly, is they have this alpha issue, and then it's going to cross over between Hulk and Thor for the next 3 or 4 issues, and then they'll do an Omega. That was how. What else have they done? That Reckoning War is kind of like that. Yeah, it's not an uncommon thing, but it's not exactly the format I was expecting. It's only a drag with that sort of thing when it's crossing over into a book I don't normally read, and then I have to decide if I want to buy the issues or not. And honestly, I've done it both ways, and either way is fine most of the time. Like, there's been a couple, I can't remember it now, but I did finally read the issues that I had skipped. There was some event a few years ago. I can't even remember if it was Marvel or DC now, but it crossed over into a book I read and also into one that I did not. So I just skipped the ones. I didn't buy the ones for the monthly title that, I just bought the issues that I would normally buy. I mean, especially at this point, I have read over 9 comic books in my life. And so I feel like I've got, especially superhero comics, like I really feel like I've got the beats down. So, like, it's the same. Look, so when I was a kid, I don't know if I've ever gone off on this. It's not a huge tangent, so don't get too comfortable. When I was a kid and I started collecting comics, one of the appeals back then, especially, which I don't think really holds for kids nowadays, but I also don't care about that really. Part of the appeal of collecting comic books was that there were so many that you had missed. That's why they were numbered so high. You're like, oh shoot, I have to go back and find all these back issues, and then that's how your collection builds. And right, there'd be a lot of editorial footnotes right in the comic itself. Like if a character says, "Remember that time we punched that guy?" and a little asterisk, and then it'll say, "Oh, see this issue of Super Fart or whatever," and you go, "Okay, I would see that." And then, but it drove me nuts that I couldn't have it all right in front of me. I wanted just to be able to sit and read the whole story from beginning to end, which is, at that time, was kind of silly because that's not really how they were writing. Superhero comics didn't really have a beginning or end. They were just this mass. Now, probably thanks to dorks like me growing up and having some disposable income, they do kind of write them that way. So people, and that's what I hear more, or not more than anything, but I hear that a lot at the shop is people are like, I don't want to read this if I don't have the whole thing, because they want to just read it all. And it kind of makes sense, because like I say, that's how they write superhero comics, especially now, to be read as novels, not as serialized comics. To varying, I think there are some books that do still try to maintain that monthly feel. They don't want the monthly readers to feel like they're getting gypped. But it's just kind of the nature of the business / art right now, is that everything's written for trade. Trade paperback. Collected trade paperback. Why did I get off on this rant? Oh, right. So I felt that way, especially when I was first started working in a comic shop, and I just had pretty much unfettered access to anything. And so, like, why only read a few issues when I can get the rest that I need down at the shop and read the whole thing in one go? And I still do that. But I'm also a bit of an oddity in that I buy single back issues and read them that way. Usually, for the older stuff, I'll buy trades, I'll read on the app, but I prefer single issues. I always have, and I probably always will. I no longer only exclusively buy single issues, but what the hell is going on out there? Did you hear that? Somebody backed a truck into my neighbor's dog, and it's still barking. Completely lost my place. It was hardly worth it to begin with. Oh, right, that's what it was. What I'm driving at is that I'm at the point now where I don't care. I'll read a comic wherever. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the story, if it's not. Sometimes, like, I've been reading the Ultimate X-Men from the beginning, and I haven't been jumping around because I have most of them, and the ones that I don't are either easily gettable or I can read them on the app. But yeah, if I weren't reading either Hulk or Thor, then I would, if I say I was just reading Hulk and not Thor, I would just buy the Hulk issues and then catch up on Thor later. I am, in fact, reading both those titles, though, so there. Plus, Nick had already did. And then finally, 8 Billion Genies #1. This is great. There's not really much more I can say that I didn't say last week, though. It's not, and I don't want, that sounds like I'm being critical or saying that. For one thing, it's very much what I expected, and I don't want to really blow it. I don't know why I'm still worried about that. Oh, because I'm a polite person, that's why. Oh, you know what? I just realized this young lady's wearing a Bikini Kill t-shirt. You can't really tell. So, the central action of the story takes place in just one bar in Michigan somewhere. And all of a sudden, everybody has a genie pops up in front of everybody and says, hey, you have one wish. And the best part of the story so far is the very wise bartender said, immediately wished that no other wishes would have any effect on anyone in the bar. Which was probably the smartest wish I've ever heard of in the millions of wish stories that you've heard over there. So it's great. And it looks really bananas. And it's going to be just like Curse Words, I believe, but better. I think it's going to be more over the top than Curse Words. And Curse Words was pretty over the top. So, Soul and Brown, you've done it again. All right. Well, that was picks of last week. Okay. I have to vote in my local primary election, and I have to make dinner. Did my laundry already. I'm gonna upload this goddamn thing for these idiots. Oh, I didn't turn this off yet.